I have no idea what it is about my computer that it can't go 7 minutes into a YouTube video without screwing up. The odd part about it is everything goes blank on my side, they say something went wrong, but on your side you can see me, as in that last video where I was swearing profusely and you could still see me doing this ugly face that I have when I don't have my glasses on and can't see what's going on. Anyway, so like I said, it's very difficult for me to come up with a situation that doesn't have an ethical dimension. When you look at chocolate versus vanilla, I once dated a girl whose father was a vanilla magnate. I know, trust me, it's weird for me too. And he would come home from Madagascar, where much of our vanilla comes from, and say, "Oh, the workers showed up in their finest clothes, which were tattered jeans and cigarette burned whole flannels, and they came to collect their paycheck, which was, $14 for the last month, and they were just so happy to see the boss." And I remember thinking, my God, that's the most terrible thing I've ever heard, until I heard about certain ways that chocolate is produced, which is also in third world countries where people aren't necessarily ethically played. So even the choice of choosing vanilla or chocolate ice cream might, if you're a vegan, for instance, might have the added ethical dimension of whether you should have dairy products, whether you should eat anything that comes from an animal. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Now, I'm a lover of both chocolate and vanilla ice cream, so I'm not saying that this ethical impulse has definitely been subdued in me, but at the very least, it's something to think about when you're making what you think are just simple, what do I want to do kind of questions, okay? It's kind of strange that way. So, like I said, this week is going to be extremely hard in the readings. But don't worry, we have Death next week, which will just kind of be a nice, smooth trail from here on out. Anyway, so what I want to get at real quick is the sort of ways that philosophers talk about ethics. And I'm going to guide you through the readings as best I can now, and I count on you to be honest with me when you need help. Start the readings early in the week. I have started to see some cracks in the question sets, and I think it's partially because we're at the point now where you can't just read it on Friday and turn it in on Saturday. You're going to have to let it kind of percolate for a little bit. This is the hardcore stuff, like I said before. Sorry, I don't mean to keep shaking. Okay, so the readings for this week. 1, and you'll have to watch my video to know this, you do not have to do the card reading, the last card reading, the feminist view, or the Quran or Analects. Not that I have any problems with them, I just don't see how they fit in the excerpts that we have. Now, the readings start out with 2 versions of ethics given to us by the Judeo-Christian Bible. One from the Old Testament, which is the Ten Commandments. One from the New Testament, which is the Sermon on the Mount, in which Jesus sort of tells you who's blessed and why they're blessed. The questions that I'm going to be asking are about where these moral groundings come from. Okay? In the sense of the Bible, we have God, in the form of Moses, telling us what it is we should do or shouldn't do. In the form of Jesus, we have a divine figure, supposedly, telling us about who should be favored based on perhaps his divine insight into the world. Perhaps with Jesus we may have more of a non-religious basis, or a non-just, hey, I'm God, so you have to listen to me basis, because there is sort of a reference to things like love, human love for each other, that kind of undergird the ethics. Otherwise, if I just said, don't touch that red button. No matter what you do, don't touch that red button. You're not really acting ethically, necessarily, if I just tell you, don't do this. You always have to know why. That's what philosophy is all about. Why do I act this way? Why shouldn't I do this? So I want you to really be thinking when you're reading the Ten Commandments or the Sermon on the Mount, am I given a reason why these things are the case? Or am I just told not to do them or to do them? So that's one. After that, you're given Aristotle. Aristotle is going to be a little difficult because we don't have any of his actual existing writings. We're told that he was one of the greatest writers of all time. Unfortunately, all of his work was burned because people hate intellectuals, and all we have are lecture notes that he prepared or his students prepared from his lectures. Aristotle wants to take it one step farther and say, why be ethical? What is good about being ethical? He wants to say that philosophy can't just be the sort of handmaiden of whatever ethics happen to be popular at some time or another, right? We can't just use philosophy to justify what we already think is right. We have to examine it. Aristotle wants to say that ethics comes from, it serves some purpose, okay? And that's important because that's different from saying that don't do this or do this. That's saying that there is some reason exterior to ethics for us to be ethical. In Aristotle's point of view, that extra something, that exterior motive, is human happiness. He wants to say that we don't just act ethically because we're told to or because tradition tells us to. We act ethically because it participates in the achievement of human happiness. Okay? I want you to examine that claim because I think that he has something, but we might want to ask ourselves, does acting morally always lead to our own happiness? Right? We could find a wallet that has $1,000 in it and think, wow, that would make me really happy to have that money. But then we do the right thing, we give the wallet back with the money in it, and we don't necessarily see where our happiness from that situation derives. Yeah, I guess there's that wonderful, warm and fuzzy feeling that you did the right thing, but what if you give the wallet back and it turns out the guy's a total prick, right? He's a total rich guy that doesn't care about you, and, he's a jerk, and, it turns out that if you hadn't given it back, maybe you would have felt a lot better about it. Right? So we have to analyze the claim that human happiness is tied up in being ethical. It's a strange claim. It really is. Moving on, we're going to read Immanuel Kant, probably the most famous philosopher, best philosopher. I don't necessarily agree with the damn word he says, but it's hard to disagree with the way he goes about it, who wants to try to say that ethics, being ethical or moral, has nothing to do with any end other than itself. It doesn't matter if being ethical makes you happy, makes you sad. Doesn't matter if you make somebody else sad, if you hurt somebody else's feelings. Ethics are ethics without any reference to any other aspect of the situation other than the dictates of reason. Kant believes that to be ethical, we must be rational. This is what separates us from the animals, he thinks. Animals can't be rational, so they can't be ethical, right? They just go by whatever urges or feelings or sentiments that they have at any given moment, and that's how they act. Whereas human beings have the ability to reflect on things and be reasonable, and since we have that ability, we must use it, says Kant. And using it means using it no matter what consequences it has in the world. In Kant, there's very little to do with the consequences of an action. As such, he comes up with the idea of a categorical imperative, which is basically to say there's a reason-based test to find out whether or not our ideas are ethical. Basically, if we would be willing to universalize those ideas into a law that everyone must follow, would we be happy? Would it be rationally coherent to do so? So, for example, if I say, I'll ride the bus for free, I'll sneak by the bus driver because I don't have very much money. So our question then is, if I made that a universal law that everybody cheated the bus driver out of the money, would I come to a situation that is rationally coherent? In that situation, if everybody cheated the bus driver, the bus company would never make any money, and it would be rationally incoherent because it would go out of business. So I can't make an exception for myself if I make it a universal law. Imagine if I said, oh, well, I can lie to people about, where I got this money or why I did something, but I don't want everybody else to. No, Kant asks us to make it a universal law. And if we would make it a universal law that everybody would lie to each other, we would have a rationally incoherent society. Now, you might have spotted some problem, which is that even by asking whether or not everybody should follow this law, we are asking about certain consequences. If everybody lied, if everybody didn't pay their bus fare, right? So we have to ask ourselves whether Kant has violated his own logic. Now we move on to John Stuart Mill, who says the opposite is true of what Kant says. Mill says you have to do exactly the opposite, which is you have to look at the consequences. The consequences are the only thing that matters. otherwise, it's just sort of empty philosophizing, right? So do I tell the little white lie to the dying man, in order to make his death that much more peaceful? Or do I do as Kant says, tell the truth no matter what, because doing so would violate the sense of reason if you do? Well, I got really violent there for a second. So for John Stuart Mill, his argument is that we must analyze what we think the consequences are going to be and act based on what consequences create the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Now, of course, there are some problems with this, and we're going to get into those in a second. Now, I am going to stop this one because I'm sure pretty soon it's going to happen, and I have the same cat gnawing at the power cord for my computer, which I don't think is a good thing, and I'll be right back.